The conference hall on Axiom Prime stretched nearly half a kilometer in length. 43 different species sat in their designated zones, each area modified for their specific needs. Some seats held water tanks. Others pumped methane gas. A few species floated in gravity-neutral bubbles. But the human delegation sat in simple chairs, breathing the standard oxygen-nitrogen mix that most council species preferred. Ambassador Jiwan stood at the speaking platform. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She wore the blue and white formal robes of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around her, thousands of alien eyes watched. Some of those eyes had 3 pupils. Others had compound lenses. A few saw in spectrums humans couldn't even imagine. The border conflict can be resolved peacefully, Jiwan said. Her voice was calm and steady. Earth volunteers to mediate between the Krelith Dominion and the colony worlds. We have successfully negotiated 17 disputes in the past 30 years. Violence is never the answer. The council speaker, a Quillarian named Vrelt, clicked his beak in approval. His species looked like large parrots covered in blue and green feathers. They evolved from tree-dwelling prey animals on a world with few predators. Vrelt believed deeply that all conflicts could be talked through. The Council accepts Earth's generous offer, Vrelt announced. Humans have proven themselves the most peaceful species in Council space. Your wisdom in avoiding violence is an example to us all. In the human section, Dr. Hayun shifted in her seat. She was the chief xenobiologist, and she had been studying alien psychology for 15 years. Something worried her. She pulled out her data pad and made a note. They still don't understand what we really are. Captain Taeyang sat beside her. He commanded the diplomatic vessel called Harmony's Voice. Before joining the diplomatic corps, he had spent 20 years in Earth's military. That was back before First Contact, when humans still fought each other over resources and territory. He remembered those days clearly. You look concerned, Taeyang whispered to Hayun. I am, she replied quietly. The Krelith are different from other species we've dealt with. They're aggressive, territorial. They might interpret our peace offerings as weakness. Taeyang nodded slowly. He had read the reports. The Krelith were large reptilian creatures standing nearly 3 meters tall. They had only joined the Council 5 years ago. Their culture valued strength and dominance. They had evolved as apex predators on a brutal world, but even the Krelith didn't understand what humans were. Nobody did. After the council session ended, Jiwan gathered her team in a private conference room. The room was small and plain, with white walls and a simple table. Security screens prevented any surveillance. Hayun, show me your report, Jiwan said. The xenobiologist pulled up holographic displays. Charts and graphs floated in the air above the table. They showed evolutionary data, psychological profiles, and threat assessments. Most council species evolved as prey animals, Hayun explained. The Quillarians, the Tentari, the Vosh, the Meridians. They developed intelligence to hide, to cooperate, to avoid danger. Even the few predator species we've encountered were ambush hunters or scavengers. She pulled up an image of a human skeleton, then images of Earth's animals. Wolves, lions, orcas, hawks. Humans are different, Hayun continued. We're persistence predators. We're pack hunters. On Earth, our ancestors would track prey for days without stopping. We would run animals to exhaustion. We developed tools to kill from a distance. We learned to coordinate in groups to take down creatures much larger than ourselves. Taeyang looked at the data, but we've been peaceful for over a century. Since First Contact, humans haven't started a single conflict. That's the problem, Hayun said. The Council thinks we're naturally peaceful. They don't understand that we're choosing to restrain ourselves. They've never seen what humans can do when that restraint breaks. Jiwan studied the floating images. She had been an ambassador for 30 years. She had dedicated her life to building trust between humans and the galaxy. But she knew Hayun was right. Keep this report classified, Jiwan ordered. If the Council knew what we really were, they might fear us. Or worse, they might test us. 3 days later, Taeyang's ship left Axiom Prime. The Harmony's Voice was a sleek diplomatic vessel, painted white with blue trim. It carried no visible weapons. Its crew of 43 were trained in negotiation and cultural sensitivity. They were some of the best diplomats humanity had ever produced. But in the cargo hold, hidden beneath medical supplies and food containers, there were weapons, standard procedure for any human ship venturing into dangerous space. Taiyang checked the manifest personally. Pulse rifles. Plasma charges. Tactical armor. Enough to defend the ship if negotiations failed. Captain, we're approaching Krelith border space, called out the navigation officer, a young man named Dai Siok. He had graduated top of his class at the Diplomatic Academy. Standard approach, Taiyang ordered. Transmit our credentials and request permission to meet with their leadership. The ship glided through space toward a massive space station. The Krelith border fortress was dark gray, covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. It looked designed for war, not diplomacy. A message came back. The voice was deep and harsh, translated through the universal communication system. Humans, we grant you permission to dock. But know that words will not change our position. The colony worlds in our territory belong to us now. Taiyang kept his expression neutral. We look forward to discussing the situation. Meanwhile, on the human colony world called New Jeju, life continued normally. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green forests. 50,000 colonists had built homes there over the past 40 years. They farmed, they built communities, they raised families. Sergeant Minho ran training exercises with the Colonial Defense Force. They were officially called a Civil Protection Unit. But Minho had been a soldier before becoming a colonist. He trained his team hard. Again, he shouted as his squad ran through tactical drills. You're too slow. Move like you mean it. A young girl named Yuna watched from nearby. She was 14 years old with bright eyes and a music recorder in her hands. She was documenting life on New Jeju for a school project. Sergeant Minho, why do we need defense training? She asked. The council keeps us safe. We haven't had a war in over 100 years. Minho paused. He looked at the innocent girl and felt a weight in his chest. How could he explain? How could he tell her that peace only lasted as long as everyone chose to honor it? It's just practice, he said gently. Probably nothing will ever happen. But it's good to be prepared. Yuna smiled and went back to recording the daily activities of the colony. She interviewed farmers, teachers, and engineers. She captured the laughter of children playing in parks. She documented a community living in peace, far from Earth among the stars. She didn't know that Krelith warships were gathering in the darkness beyond their system. She didn't know that her peaceful world had been marked as a target. She didn't know that her recorded footage would someday be shown to the entire galaxy as evidence of what was lost. Back on Axiom Prime, Ambassador G1 received a priority message from Earth Command. It was heavily encrypted, using codes that hadn't been activated since before first contact. Her hands trembled slightly as she decoded it. The message was simple. Condition Apex protocols updated and standing by. Awaiting authorization. G1 deleted the message and sat in silence for a long time. Condition Apex. The emergency military response plan that humanity had maintained in secret for 127 years. The plan they hoped would never be needed. She looked out the window at the peaceful station where dozens of species worked together. They trusted each other. They believed in diplomacy. They thought violence was a thing of the past. I hope we never have to show you, G1 whispered to the stars. I hope you never learn what we've been holding back. But in the Krelith border territories, War Prime Thexus was preparing his fleet for an attack. He had studied the humans. They talked about peace. They avoided conflict. They seemed weak. He would teach them what strength really meant. He would take their colony worlds and show the Council that power, not words, determined territory. It would be the greatest mistake the Krelith would ever make. The diplomatic meeting lasted 6 hours and accomplished nothing. War Prime Thexus sat across the table from Captain Taiyang, his massive reptilian form taking up twice the space of any human. His scales were dark red, almost black. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits. When he spoke, his teeth showed sharp and numerous. Your words mean nothing, Thexus said. The colony worlds exist in our territory. They will submit to Krelith authority or they will be removed. Taiyang remained calm. Those colonies were established 70 years ago, long before the Krelith joined the Council. The settlers have legal rights under Council law. Thexus laughed. It was a harsh grating sound. Council law is made by prey species who fear conflict. We are not prey. We take what we want. Then you violate the Council charter, Taiyang replied. His voice stayed level, professional. That will have consequences. What consequences? Thexus leaned forward. Will the humans file a complaint? Will you make speeches? You are weak. Your entire species talks about peace because you cannot fight. Something flickered in Tai Yang's eyes, just for a moment. Then it was gone. He stood slowly. This meeting is over. I will report to the council that negotiations have failed. Report whatever you wish, Thexus said. It changes nothing. Tai Yang and his crew returned to Harmony's voice. Once the airlock sealed and they were safely away from the Krelith station, Daesok turned to his captain. Sir, they're planning something. I could see it in their body language. They have no intention of negotiating. I know, Tai Yang said quietly. Send a coded message to all human colonies in this sector. Tell them to prepare evacuation protocols, just in case. You think they'll actually attack? Daesok asked. Tai Yang looked out at the stars. I think they believe we're weak, and that makes them dangerous. On New Jeju, Sergeant Minho received the coded warning. He immediately called an emergency meeting with the colony's leadership. The mayor, a woman named Soman, read the message with growing concern. Should we evacuate? She asked. Minho shook his head. The council will intervene. They always do. But we should move civilians to the shelters just as a precaution. Tell them it's a drill. That night, Yuna helped her parents pack emergency supplies. She didn't understand why they needed to practice evacuation drills so suddenly, but she filmed it all with her recorder. She interviewed her neighbors, asking how they felt. I'm sure it's nothing, one elderly man said. The council has kept peace for over a century. Why would that change now? Yuna smiled and agreed. She was young and optimistic. She believed in the future. At 3:47 hours the next morning, Krelith warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel above 3 human colony worlds simultaneously. New Jeju was one of them. The warships were massive, bristling with weapons. They had not come to negotiate. The attack began without warning. Orbital bombardment lit up the night sky. Energy beams tore through the atmosphere, striking population centers. The colony's defense grid activated automatically, but it was designed to stop pirates and smugglers, not a full military fleet. Minho was thrown from his bed by the first explosion. Alarms screamed throughout the colony. He grabbed his tactical gear and ran for the command center. All defense forces, active status now, he shouted into his communicator. This is not a drill. We are under attack. Get civilians to the shelters immediately. The colony descended into controlled chaos. Families ran through the streets toward underground shelters. Defense force members took up positions trying to shoot down incoming missiles. The sky burned red and orange. Yuna ran with her parents toward the nearest shelter. She still had her recorder in her hand, filming everything. She caught footage of the explosions, of people running, of the fear on everyone's faces. Mom, what's happening? She cried. Just keep running, baby, her mother said. We're almost there. They were 50 meters from the shelter entrance when the orbital strike hit. The energy beam was precise and devastating. It punched through the ground directly above the shelter, collapsing the entire structure. The explosion threw Yuna backward. She hit the ground hard. Her ears rang. She couldn't hear anything but a high-pitched whine. Through the smoke and dust, she saw her mother's hand reaching toward her. Then there was another explosion and everything went dark. When Minho reached what remained of the shelter, he found bodies in the rubble. So many bodies. His squad worked frantically, trying to pull survivors out, but most were already gone. One of his soldiers found a music recorder, still intact, still playing. It was Yuna's. They found her 10 meters away, clutching her mother's hand. Neither was breathing. Minho held the small recorder in his shaking hands. The last recording showed Yuna's smiling face as she talked about her hopes for the future. Then it showed the sky turning red. Then static. He carefully placed the recorder in his pack. Evidence, testimony. Proof of what the Krelith had done. The bombardment continued for 3 hours. By the time the Krelith fleet withdrew, 70% of New Jeju's infrastructure was destroyed. The casualty count climbed throughout the day. 42,000 dead, 5,000 missing, presumed dead, 3,000 critically injured. Similar reports came from the other 2 colonies. The total human casualties, 127,000 dead in a single morning. Captain Tai Yang's ship raced toward New Jeju as soon as the attack began, but they arrived too late to help. He stood on the bridge, watching the smoke rise from the planet's surface. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the arms of his command chair until his knuckles turned white. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Krelith fleet, Daesok reported. His voice was hollow with shock. Put it on screen. War Prime Thexus appeared, looking pleased with himself. Humans. This is what happens when prey species refuse to accept their place. Your colonies are ashes. Your people are dead. Tell your council that the Krelith Dominion takes what it wants. If you wish to avoid more death, you will abandon all territory we claim. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent except for the quiet beeping of monitors. Captain, Daysok said carefully. What are your orders? Taeyang stared at the screen for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, colder, harder. Send a message to Earth Command. Use Priority Alpha encryption. Tell them to activate Condition Apex. Sir? Daysok's eyes widened. That's a full military response authorization. I know what it is, Taeyang said. Send it. On Axiom Prime, the Council convened an emergency session within hours of the attacks. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate action. Others called for calm and more negotiations. Ambassador G1 sat in the human section, watching footage of the attacks on a private screen. She saw the shelters collapse. She saw the bodies in the streets. She saw Yuna's last recording, the one Sergeant Minho had transmitted to Earth Command. Speaker Vrelt called for order. Please, everyone. Violence only creates more violence. The humans must respond with diplomacy, not aggression. More death serves nothing. G1 stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. She looked different. The warm diplomatic smile was gone. Her eyes were cold. Speaker Vrelt, she said quietly. With respect, you have no idea what you're talking about. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. G1 had never spoken harshly in the council before. The Krelith murdered 127,000 human civilians, G1 continued. They targeted shelters. They killed children. They broadcast their crimes as a demonstration of power. And you want us to negotiate? Ambassador, I understand your anger, Vrelt said. But revenge only continues the cycle of violence. This isn't about revenge, G1 said. Her voice was steady, but everyone could hear the steel underneath. This is about justice, about consequences, about teaching a lesson that should never need teaching. She pulled out a data chip and uploaded it to the council's main display. Dr. Hayun's full report appeared, the one that had been classified for decades. You never asked what humans were before we met you, G1 said. You assumed we were peaceful by nature. You were wrong. The display showed Earth's evolutionary history, images of human ancestors hunting across vast plains, data on persistence predation, statistics on human conflict throughout history, evidence of what humanity had been before they chose civilization. We are apex predators, G1 said. Pack hunters. We evolved to track prey across continents without rest. We developed tools to kill at a distance. We learned to coordinate and strategize and outlast anything we hunted. And we were very, very good at it. The council chamber was absolutely silent now. For 127 years we have restrained ourselves, G1 continued. We chose peace. We chose diplomacy. We chose to be your friends and partners. That choice cost us everything when our children burned. She looked directly at Vrelt. You will learn what restraint means. The Krelith will learn what it means to be prey. Ji-Wan sat down. Her hands were shaking, but her expression was firm. Across the galaxy in the outer solar system beyond Mars, a fleet began to move. Ships that had been hidden for over a century fired up their engines. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship and gave a simple order. All vessels prepare for deployment. We have our authorization. The hunt begins now. The Council's long-range sensors detected the fleet 36 hours after the Krelith attacks. At first, the sensor operators thought there was a malfunction. The readings didn't make sense. There were too many ships and they were coming from Earth's solar system. Speaker Vrelt, you need to see this, a Tentari technician said urgently. His tentacles trembled as he pulled up the display. 847 warships. They emerged from the outer solar system in perfect formation, moving with coordinated precision. The ships were black, sleek, and built unlike anything the Council had ever seen. They weren't bulky fortresses like Krelith vessels. They were built for speed and endurance. Each ship had a name painted on its hull. Grey Wolf, Orca, Golden Eagle, Peregrine, Snow Leopard, Tiger Shark, Eternal Hunt. The names meant nothing to most Council species, but Dr. Hayun understood. They were all apex predators from Earth. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Eternal Hunt, his flagship. He was 51 years old and had spent 30 of those years preparing for a war he hoped would never come. He had gray at his temples and scars on his hands from the old conflicts before first contact. His crew called him the Ghost because he could disappear into the stars and emerge exactly where his enemies didn't expect him. All ships report ready status. Admiral, said Lieutenant Gia from communications. She was 29 and had never seen real combat before. None of them had, but they had trained for this their entire lives. Broadcast the message, Hyunwoo ordered. Gia activated the wide-spectrum transmission. It would reach every Krelith vessel in their territory. The message was simple, delivered in the universal trade language but also in the Krelith's native tongue. War Prime Thexus. You hunted our children. You targeted civilians. You believed we were weak. You were wrong. We are coming for you. Run as far as you can. Hide as deep as you can. It will not matter. You are prey now. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo looked at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Daeseok, who had been transferred from diplomatic service when the war began. Daeseok, show me where they are. The young officer pulled up holographic displays. Red markers showed Krelith fleet positions. They had retreated to their border fortresses after the attacks, clearly expecting council negotiators to arrive with peace proposals. They're grouped in defensive formations around 3 fortress stations, Daeseok reported. Standard military doctrine for them. They think we'll attack their positions directly. We won't, Hyunwoo said. We're not going to fight them on their terms. We're going to hunt them. He turned to the fleet commanders on the communication channel. All ships initiate pursuit protocol Delta. We don't engage for quick kills. We track, we follow. We exhaust them. No rest, no resupply, no mercy. The human fleet split into hunting packs, each group consisting of between 20 and 40 ships. They didn't rush toward the Krelith positions. Instead, they spread out, creating a wide net across space. The first Krelith patrol detected the human ships 12 hours later. 5 Krelith cruisers were running a standard border patrol when their sensors picked up 3 human vessels approaching. The Krelith commander, a warrior named Skroth, immediately ordered battle stations. 3 ships against our 5? The humans are fools. Prepare to attack, but the human ships didn't attack. They matched the Krelith's course and speed, staying just outside weapons range. They followed, silent, patient, waiting. They're not engaging, Skroth's tactical officer reported. They're just following us. Then we'll force them to fight, Skroth decided. He ordered his ships to turn and pursue the human vessels. The human ships immediately increased speed, staying ahead but visible. They didn't run away completely. They stayed close enough to be tracked. They were leading the Krelith somewhere. This continued for 6 hours. The Krelith ships chased the human vessels deeper into empty space, away from their fortress support. Then more human ships appeared on their sensors. First 3 more, then 5, then 10. Skroth suddenly realized they were surrounded. 20 human ships had boxed in his 5 cruisers, but still the humans didn't fire. What are they doing? His tactical officer asked nervously. Then the human ships opened fire, but not to destroy. They targeted engines and weapon systems, precision strikes that crippled but didn't kill. Within minutes, Skroth's ships were dead in space, powerless and helpless. A transmission came through. A human voice, calm and professional. Your ships are disabled. You have emergency life support for 72 hours. We are transmitting your coordinates to your fleet. They can rescue you. If they dare to come, the human ships left. They didn't finish off the crippled vessels. They just left. Why didn't they kill us? Skroth's officer asked. Skroth stared at the empty space where the human ships had been. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. This same pattern repeated across Krelith space. Human ships appeared, disabled Krelith vessels, and left them drifting. Every disabled ship sent out distress signals. Every distress signal forced the Krelith to send rescue teams. Every rescue team had to split off from the main fleet. The Krelith fleet was being broken apart, piece by piece. War Prime Thexus watched this happening from his command fortress. His strategic advisors were confused and frightened. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered, one advisor said. They wound and withdraw. They don't finish battles. What kind of strategy is this? Thexus understood, and the understanding filled him with dread. They're hunting us, like prey animals. They're separating us from the herd. Then we retreat to the home system, another advisor suggested. Gather all our forces in one place. They can't hunt what they can't divide. Thexus nodded. Order all ships to withdraw to the home system. Full retreat. But retreating was exactly what the humans wanted. As the Krellith fleet began its withdrawal, the human ships followed. Not attacking, just following, staying just close enough to be seen on sensors. A constant presence, a reminder that they were there. The Krellith fleet traveled for 4 days toward their home system. They couldn't move at maximum faster than light speed because they had too many damaged ships in tow. The human fleet matched their pace exactly. On the second day, Lieutenant Jia began broadcasting on all frequencies. Not threats, not demands, just sound, music, Yuna's music. The recordings from her music player that Sergeant Minho had sent to Earth Command. A 14-year-old girl's voice singing songs about hope and peace and the future. Between the songs, Jia read names. All 127,000 names of the humans who died in the attacks. She read them slowly, clearly, one after another. It took hours. Then she started again from the beginning. The broadcast never stopped. Day and night, Yuna's music and the names of the dead filled the communication channels. Some Krellith ship crews tried to block the broadcasts. Others listened. The continuous reminder of what they had done began to wear on them psychologically. On the 4th day, a Krellith supply ship tried to break away from the fleet to gather resources from a nearby station. 6 human ships immediately pursued. They chased the supply vessel for 8 hours, never letting it stop, never letting it slow down. When the Krellith ship finally ran out of fuel, the human ships disabled it and moved on. No supplies reached the Krellith fleet. Every attempt to resupply was intercepted. Every courier was hunted down. Every support vessel was crippled and left drifting. By the 7th day, the Krellith crews were exhausted. They couldn't rest properly because they knew the human ships were out there, watching, waiting. Every alarm, every sensor blip made them jump. They started making mistakes. A council observation vessel arrived to monitor the situation. Dr. Hayun was aboard, along with several council representatives who wanted to see the war firsthand. Speaker Vrelt watched the sensor displays in horror. Why don't the humans just attack and finish this? Why are they prolonging it? Hayun looked at him with sad eyes. Because this isn't about killing, Speaker. This is about teaching. The Krellith need to understand what it means to be hunted. They need to feel what their victims felt. Fear, helplessness, exhaustion. But this is cruel, Vrelt protested. Yes, Hayun agreed. War is cruel. The Krellith learned that when they killed 127,000 civilians. Now they're learning what happens when you make predators angry. On the Eternal Hunt, Admiral Hyunwoo studied the tactical displays. The Krellith fleet was beginning to fracture. Some ships were falling behind. Others were breaking formation. The discipline that held them together was crumbling. They'll reach their home system in approximately 48 hours, Daesok reported. Good, Hyunwoo said. Let them get home. Let them think they're safe. Then we show them that nowhere is safe. Lieutenant Jia continued her broadcasts. Yuna's voice echoed through space, singing about a future that would never come. The names of the dead rolled on endlessly, and the human fleet followed, patient and relentless, like wolves tracking wounded prey through the snow. The Krellith had wanted to teach humanity about strength. Now they were learning a far harder lesson. They were learning what it meant to be hunted by something that would never stop, never tire, and never forget. The Krellith home system was called Thexkar, a massive red sun orbited by 7 planets. The 4th planet was the Krellith homeworld, a hot and hostile place where only the strong survived. It was fitting that such an aggressive species evolved there. When the Krellith fleet finally arrived home after 41 days of being hunted across space, they expected relief. They expected safety. They expected reinforcements. What they found was the human fleet already, waiting for them. 847 black ships, hung in perfect formation between the Krellith fleet and their homeworld. They had somehow predicted the exact route and arrived first. The Krellith crews, exhausted and terrified, stared at their sensors in disbelief. How? War Prime Thexus demanded. How did they get here before us? His tactical officer's hands shook as he checked the data. They predicted our course perfectly. They took a faster route while we were distracted with rescue operations. They've been waiting for us. On the Eternal Hunt, Admiral Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. Lieutenant Daysok had calculated the Krelith's probable routes days ago. Humans were good at prediction, at understanding patterns, at thinking several moves ahead. It was how their ancestors hunted. "Admiral, the Krelith are hailing us," Gia reported. "Put it through." War Prime Thexus appeared on screen. He looked nothing like the confident warrior who had mocked humanity weeks ago. His scales were dull. His eyes were sunken. He had barely slept in over a month. "Enough," Thexus said. His voice was hoarse. "We surrender. We will withdraw from the disputed territories. We will pay reparations. Just stop, please." Hyunwoo studied the Krelith commander for a long moment. "Did you offer our children terms? Did you accept their surrender when they begged for mercy in those shelters?" Thexus's head lowered. He had no answer. "Surrender is not enough," Hyunwoo said. "You wanted to teach us about strength. Now we will teach you about consequences." The transmission ended. Hyunwoo turned to his bridge crew. "Initiate the teaching protocol. Captain Sujin, your teams are authorized to deploy." Captain Sujin commanded the Special Operations Forces. She was 36 years old and had trained for exactly this kind of mission. Her teams were the best soldiers humanity had produced. They were experts in infiltration, tracking, and surgical strikes. 20 assault ships launched from the human fleet. They were small, fast, and nearly invisible to sensors. They slipped through the Krelith defensive perimeter like ghosts. The first target was a military command center on Thexkar's largest moon. Sujin's team went in fast and precise. They disabled the facility's defenses, secured the command staff, and extracted them within 12 minutes. 0 casualties on either side. It happened again at another facility, and another. Within 6 hours, Sujin's teams had captured 17 Krelith military leaders, including 3 members of their high command. The captured leaders were not harmed. They were given food, water, and medical attention. Then they were taken to transport ships and moved to a location that made their blood run cold: New Jeju. The planet was still scarred from the attacks. Burned buildings stood like broken teeth against the sky. The memorial site had been erected where the shelter once stood, with 127,000 names carved into black stone. Yuna's name was at the center, her music player sealed in a clear case, still playing her last recording on loop. The Krelith prisoners were brought to this place and made to see what they had done. War Prime Thexus was among them. Sergeant Minho, who had lost half his colony, stood guard. He said nothing. He just watched as Thexus walked among the ruins. "I didn't know," Thexus said quietly. "I didn't know they were real. We saw you as obstacles, resources, not people." "Now you know," Minho replied. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Now you understand." But the teaching protocol wasn't finished. Each Krelith leader was given a survival pack with food, water, medical supplies, and a locator beacon. Then they were released into the wilderness zones of various human colony worlds. "You have 127 hours, Captain Sujin told them. 1 hour for each year humanity spent choosing peace over war. Our teams will hunt you, not to kill, to teach. You will learn what it means to be prey. You will learn what our children felt in those final moments when your bombs fell." The hunts began. Human tracking teams, experts trained in pursuit and survival, followed each Krelith leader through forests, mountains, and deserts. They never got close enough to catch them, but they were always close enough to be heard. Branches breaking, footsteps in the dark, the occasional glimpse of a human shadow. The Krelith leaders ran, they hid. They tried every survival technique they knew, but the humans were always there, patient, relentless, following. After 127 hours, exactly to the minute, the hunts ended. The humans activated the locator beacons and extracted each Krelith leader. They were exhausted, traumatized, but alive. They had learned the lesson. Meanwhile, in the council chambers on Axiom Prime, an emergency session was in chaos. Representatives shouted and argued. Some demanded that the council fleet intervene to stop the humans. Others insisted that the Krelith deserved their fate. Speaker Vrelt called for order. "We must stop this madness. The humans have gone too far. This is not justice, it's revenge." Ambassador Jiwon stood slowly. "No, Speaker. This is exactly justice. The Krelith believed strength meant the ability to kill. We are teaching them that true strength means the ability to show mercy, even when you have the power to destroy." "You're torturing them," a Tentari representative shouted. "We're educating them," Jiwon corrected. "Every Krelith leader we hunted is alive and unharmed. Can the Krelith say the same about our civilians?" Can they return the 127,000 people they murdered? The chamber fell silent. Dr. Hayun pulled up data on the main display. The psychological impact of being hunted is profound for a predator species. The Krelith evolved as apex hunters. They have never been prey before. This experience will fundamentally change how they view conflict. It will teach them empathy. It will teach them restraint. And if they don't learn? Vrelt asked. Then we continue the lesson, Jiwan said simply. For as long as it takes. A message arrived from the Krelith government. They were offering complete surrender, unconditional. They would dismantle their offensive military forces. They would pay reparations to every family affected by the attacks. They would submit to council oversight of their military for the next century. And they offered one more thing. War Prime Thexus and his entire command staff requested to face human justice. They would accept whatever punishment humanity deemed appropriate. Admiral Hyunwoo received the surrender terms on the Eternal Hunt. He gathered his senior officers for a final decision. We could push further, Captain Sujin said. We could occupy their worlds. We could dismantle their entire civilization. We could, Hyunwoo agreed. But that's not who we are. We're not conquerors. We're teachers. The question is, have they learned? Lieutenant Daesok pulled up psychological assessments of the Krelith population. The data shows significant change in their cultural attitudes. The hunted leaders are spreading their experiences. The Krelith people are beginning to understand what they did wrong. Jia added her analysis. The broadcasts worked. Yuna's story has reached every Krelith household. They know her name now. They know all the names. It's become impossible for them to see us as just obstacles anymore. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Then we accept their surrender. But the terms are non-negotiable. Full military reduction, reparations, council oversight, and Thexus and his command staff will be tried for war crimes. What will happen to them? Sujin asked. Exile, Hyunwoo decided. They'll live, but they'll never hold power again. They'll spend the rest of their lives remembering what they did and teaching others not to make the same mistake. The surrender was finalized 3 days later. The human fleet withdrew from Krelith space, but not all the way home. They established patrol routes along the border. A reminder. A warning. The war had lasted 49 days from first attack to final surrender. In that time, the Krelith had learned what humanity had been restraining for 127 years. They had learned what it meant to face a species that evolved to hunt, to track, to pursue without rest. But more importantly, they learned that humanity could have exterminated them completely and chose not to. That choice, that mercy in the face of power, taught a lesson more profound than any weapon could. On New Jeju, Sergeant Minho stood at the memorial and placed fresh flowers by Yuna's name. The reconstruction was beginning. The colony would be rebuilt. He pressed play on the music recorder. Yuna's voice filled the air, singing about hope and peace. We did it, he whispered. We made them understand. I hope it was enough. Behind him, the stars shone in a galaxy that would never forget what happened when humanity's patience finally broke. 6 months had passed since the Krelith surrender. The galaxy had changed in ways both visible and invisible. The council chambers on Axiom Prime felt different now. There was a tension that hadn't existed before, a wariness in how species looked at the human delegation. Captain Tae Yang walked through the station corridors toward his newly reassigned ship. He no longer commanded the Harmony's voice. That ship had been retired, its name no longer fitting for the galaxy they now lived in. His new vessel was called Vigilant Peace. The name carried a different meaning. Peace, yes, but peace maintained by vigilance, by strength, by the memory of what could happen if that peace was violated. The ship was similar in design to his old one, but everyone who saw it knew what it represented. Human ships were no longer just diplomatic vessels. They were reminders. In the Council Institute for Predator-Prey Relations, Dr. Hayun gave a lecture to a room full of students from various species. The institute had been her idea, approved by the Council in the aftermath of the war. It was dedicated to helping prey species understand predator psychology and helping predator species understand the responsibility that came with their nature. The fundamental mistake, Hayun explained to her class, was assuming that peaceful behavior meant peaceful nature. Humans chose peace for 127 years. That choice was active, deliberate, and difficult. It required constant restraint. When the Council saw humans being peaceful, they should have asked themselves what is being restrained. A young Quillarian student raised a wing. But Dr. Hayun, how were we supposed to know? Humans never told us about their true nature. Hayun nodded. That's a fair point. But here's the thing, we did tell you. Our history was available. Our evolutionary biology was documented. Our pre-contact wars were recorded. The information was there. You just didn't think it mattered because you couldn't imagine a species that could be violent and still choose peace. Another student, a Tentari, asked nervously, Are humans still dangerous? Yes, Hayun answered honestly. Humans will always be capable of violence. But that's not the right question. The right question is, will humans choose violence? And the answer is only if provoked beyond all reason. The Krelith learned that lesson. Hopefully everyone else learned it too. On New Jeju, the reconstruction was nearly complete. The colony had been rebuilt stronger than before. New buildings stood where old ones had burned. Parks and gardens grew where craters had once scarred the land. But the memorial remained untouched exactly as it had been erected. 127,000 names carved in black stone. Yuna's music player in its case at the center, still playing her recordings on an endless loop. Sergeant Minho had been promoted to colonel and now commanded the entire colonial defense force. He trained his soldiers harder than before, but the exercises had changed. They weren't just defensive drills anymore. They were lessons in restraint, in knowing when to fight and when to hold back. Remember, he told his trainees, strength is not just about what you can do, it's about what you choose not to do. We have the power to destroy, we choose to protect instead. That choice is what makes us human. A memorial garden had been planted around the monument. Minho tended it personally, making sure the flowers bloomed year-round. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. Many were Krelith. The first Krelith visitor had arrived 3 months after the war ended. A young Krelith female, barely an adult, approached the memorial with her head lowered in shame. She carried flowers in her clawed hands. Minho watched as she read the names. She stopped at Yuna's name and stood there for a long time, listening to the music. Then she placed her flowers at the base of the monument and spoke in broken universal trade language. I am sorry. We are sorry. We did not understand. Minho approached her carefully. What's your name? Rexith, she said quietly. I am a student. I am studying human culture to make sure my people never forget what we did wrong. Thank you for coming, Minho said. Thank you for remembering. More Krelith visited after that. Some came alone. Some came in groups. They always brought flowers. They always listened to Yuna's music. And they always left changed. In the Krelith Dominion, the society had transformed completely. The old warrior culture was being dismantled piece by piece. War Prime Thexus had been exiled to a remote colony world where he lived under constant council supervision. He was not imprisoned, but he was isolated. His only contact with the outside was through a communication terminal. He used it to write. His memoir, titled I Was Prey, had become required reading throughout council space. In it, he described the attacks, the hunt, and the moment he understood what his people had done. We saw humans as weak because they avoided conflict, he wrote. We didn't understand that avoiding conflict when you have the power to destroy is the ultimate form of strength. We were not strong. We were arrogant, and we paid the price for that arrogance by learning terror. The book's final chapter was dedicated to Yuna and the 127,000 other victims. Thexus had learned every name. He recited them in his sleep. They haunted him, but he believed the haunting was right. It was necessary. On Axiom Prime, the council had undergone restructuring. Human military observers now attended all sessions, not to threaten, not to intimidate, but to ensure that everyone remembered what could happen if diplomacy failed. Ambassador Jiwan still represented Earth, but her role had evolved. She was no longer just a diplomat seeking to build friendships. She was a guardian ensuring that peace was maintained through understanding and mutual respect. 3 new species had applied to join the council, specifically requesting human protection. They were smaller civilizations, vulnerable to aggression from larger neighbors. They had seen what happened to the Krelith and understood that humanity would defend those who couldn't defend themselves. The council approved the applications. Human patrol fleets now protected 15 different species across council space. Speaker Vrelt had stepped down from his position after the war. He had been replaced by a more pragmatic leader, a Meridian named Koleth, who understood that peace required both diplomacy and strength.